Good morning. So it's kind of like deja vu. You could try one trial run over there and then tweak it a bit. So we did a lot of reading before. I'm going to try and slim the reading down a bit. If you could turn to 1 Kings chapter 17. I want to talk about two guys. They have their own, in a sense, their own calling from God. Elijah and Elisha. Does everyone know who Elijah is? Put your hand up if you know who Elijah is. Okay. What about Elisha? Do you know? Put your hand up if you know who Elisha is. Now, who gets those two mixed up? Yeah, it's a common issue. Yeah, you know what? God used them in different ways. They have two different characters. They're individuals. You mean just like you and I? We have our strengths, our shortcomings, and that. But so I would like to start in chapter 17, verse 1. A little bit of reading. You guys skim through a few chapters here a bit. Go through some of the things that they were doing and trials they're going through. So verse 1, Now Elijah the Tishbite, who was of the settlers of Gilead, said to Ahab, As the Lord, the God of Israel, lives, before whom I stand, surely there shall be neither dew nor rain these years, except by my word. The word of the Lord came to him, saying, Go away from here, and turn eastward, and hide yourself by the brook Cherith, which is east of the Jordan. It shall be that you will drink of the brook, and I have commanded the ravens to provide for you there. So he went and did according to the word of the Lord, for he went and lived by the brook Cherith, which is east of the Jordan. So I think I wanted to point out there, ravens were not a clean animal for the Israelites to eat. They were unclean, but God decided to use them to bring him food. You know what I mean? How the birds brought the food and what it looked like. Did it just magically appear in their mouths and they just dropped it off, or did they pick it apart somewhere? We don't know. You use your imagination. God is God, and he can do things however he sees fit. But anyways, the birds are bringing it there. So, using ravens, an unclean animal, to do this for an Israelite. Anyways, it was just an interesting note there. So the ravens brought him meat in the morning and bread and meat in the morning and bread and meat in the evening, and he would drink from the brook. It happened after a while that the brook dried up because there was no rain in the land. Then the word of the Lord came to him, saying, Arise, go to Zarephath, which belongs to Sidon, and stay there. Behold, I have commanded a widow there to provide for you. So he's going to a land where it's Jezebel's territory. So if you know this story, you know about Jezebel. She's this evil queen, and she wants all the prophets dead, and she, turns the nation into serving Baals and all that. And so, but anyways, the territory where he's going to, there's a lady been prepared to receive him. Does she know who he is? It doesn't really necessarily say, because Elijah is the guy that came and said, there's not going to be rain here until I say so. And so the drought and all this stuff going on is, in a sense, because of him. And so you would think that a lot of people, they would be upset with him. It's like, well, why do the rest of us have to suffer, with this, and it's not fair, and yada, yada, yada. But God has already worked in the heart of this lady to receive him, whether she knows it or not. And so as he's going to there, when he came to the gate of the city, behold, a widow was there gathering sticks, and he called to her and said, Please get me a little water in a jar that I may drink. As she was going to get it, he called to her and said, Please bring me a piece of bread in your hand. But she said, As the Lord your God lives, I have no bread, only a handful of flour in the bowl and a little jar in the oil. And behold, I am gathering a few sticks, that I may go in and prepare for me and my son, that we may eat it and die. Then Elijah said to her, Do not fear. Go, do as you have said, but make me a little bread cake from it first, and bring it out to me. And afterward you may make one for yourself and for your son. For thus says the Lord God of Israel, The bowl of flour shall not be exhausted, nor shall the jar of oil be empty, until the day that the Lord sends rain on the face of the earth. So she went and did according to the word of Elijah, and she and he and her household ate for many days. The bowl of flour was not exhausted, nor did the jar of oil become empty, according to the word of the Lord which he spoke through Elijah. So they were able to eat and drink and survive during these times. And somehow God worked in her heart that when he would come, that she would believe him and do as he requests, right? If you're got your last little bit and you're thinking, this is it and we're going to die, then you give it to a stranger. We're assuming he's a stranger there. That would be difficult to do. And then while he's staying there, the son dies. And now she's kind of worried, or upset. You come here so that, we'd be cursed and my son would die. And so Elijah intercedes and God restores life back to the child. And then after that, the woman on verse 24 says, "Now I know you are a man of God, and that the word of the Lord in your mouth is true." So she witnessed this whole time that the food never ran out, and they always had to eat during this time. But yet she got comfortable, and it's she forgot the power of God and that who Elijah was serving. And so now, with a fresh miracle, it's reconfirmed, okay, God is God, and the one you serve, and then what you're saying is true. So oftentimes, right, when, let's say God does something miraculous in our lives, and then we get comfortable, and we forget that God's still there. He hasn't changed or left, and then we almost need another something so that we'll believe again. And, it's a vicious cycle. So chapter 18, verse 1, "Now it happened after many days that the word of the Lord came to Elijah in the 3rd year, saying, 'Go, show yourself to Ahab, and I will send rain in the face of the earth.' So Elijah went to show himself to Ahab. Now the famine was severe in Samaria. Ahab called Obadiah, who was over the household. Now Obadiah feared the Lord greatly, for when Jezebel destroyed the prophets of the Lord, Obadiah took 100 prophets and hid them by 50s in a cave and provided them with bread and water." So this is a guy who fears the Lord. So by doing this, that's a death sentence for him if he gets caught. And so during this whole time, he's feeding them. So how he's getting his hands on all this food and drink, he has to have help. To feed 100 guys every day, for this long period, he needs more help. So there's got to be more people on board that haven't turned themselves. But very often you just think everybody is just serving the Baals, but not necessarily the case. So then Ahab and Obadiah, they go different ways to try and find grass and food for their animals, because then the area where they're at, it's all dried up and done. And then during this time, Elijah goes and meets Obadiah on the way and says, "Tell Ahab that I will be there and there. He can see me." And Obadiah is kind of concerned, is he setting me up for a fail? Because if I tell him that and then you don't show up, I'm a dead man. So it would be kind of scary, because Ahab is, by this point, pretty upset with Elijah and the trouble he's caused. But he says, "No, I will be there." And then what the plan was from there when they met up. So I'm going to go to verse 17. "When Ahab saw Elijah, Ahab said to him, 'Is this you, you troubler of Israel?' And he said, 'I have not troubled Israel, but you and your father's house have, because you have forsaken the commandments of the Lord, and you have followed the Baals. Now then send and gather to me all Israel at Mount Carmel, together with 450 prophets of Baal and 400 prophets of the Asherah, who eat at Jezebel's table.'" So they gather all these prophets. They came to Mount Carmel, and they had a pretty big duel. A lot of you are familiar with the story, where they take and they make what's the word? Well, anyways, where they're going to set up the sacrifices. They're going to take wood, they're going to cut up the animals, and then they're going to ask for their God to send fire, or to get the fire going, so that to see who's the real God is, right? And so as they're doing this thing, Elijah lets the Baals, the people, the God that they serve, the false God, to go first. And so nothing's happening. They're chanting, they're dancing, they're doing their thing. And so in verse 27, Elijah starts to mock them. It says, "It came about at noon that Elijah mocked them and said, 'Call out with a loud voice, for he is a god. Either he is occupied or gone aside, or is on a journey, or perhaps he is asleep and needs to be awakened.'" Just teasing them. Mockery is not something that we hear a lot of, from God's prophets and that. Here's a spot where, it's just making fun. Maybe the God's sleeping. Wake him up. Shout a little bit louder. Then these guys start cutting themselves and doing things oddly, trying to encourage the God to answer, right? And they don't get an answer. Nothing comes. And then in verse 30, then Elijah said to all the people, "Come near to me." So all the people came near to him, and he repaired the altar of the Lord, which had been torn down. Elijah took 12 stones according to the number of the tribes of the sons of Jacob, to whom the word of the Lord had come, and said, "Israel shall be your name." So with the stones he built an altar in the name of the Lord and made a trench. So he's setting this whole thing up, getting the animals on there, build a trench, and then he has them fill it full of water. And he has them cover everything with water, lots and lots of water. So if this thing's going to light on fire, there's going to be no trickery. Nobody can say that, this is a setup. And so with this, they're all watching and we can see what happens, right? And then then when Elijah starts to pray in verse 36, it says, "O Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, today let it be known that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant, and I have done all these things at your word. Answer me, O Lord, answer me, that this people may know that you, O Lord, are God, and that you have turned their heart back again." Then the fire of the Lord fell and consumed the burnt offering, and the wood, and the stones, and the dust, and licked up the water that was in the trench. Can you imagine what kind of fireball that was, that the stones even got burnt up? To have a stone burn up, you got to have a pretty intense fire, right? And so there was no messing around. This offering was completely wiped out. There was nothing left. And so there was, definitely a statement made that Elijah's God answered that the Ahab's gods that they were serving, that they could not do. And so after that, they had ended up having all the false prophets and that killed. And then Elisha says to his servant, "Go up now, look toward the sea." So he went up and looked and said, "There is nothing." And he said, "Go back 7 times. It came about at the 7th time that he said, "Behold, a cloud as small as a man's hand is coming up from the sea." And he said, "Go up, say to Ahab, prepare your chariots and go down, so that the heavy shower does not stop you." So his servant says, there's a cloud maybe this big as you're, coming up way over there. And basically now Elijah's telling them, get a move on, get Ahab, tell him to go. Because if you have seen, when you get, in Mexico, a lot of times you might be aware, if you're living near the mountains, when it rained a lot of that water came rushing off the mountains, and it was almost like not a tidal wave, but like a mini tsunami sometimes. It would wash everything away that was near the mountain. So it would collect and pool, and anything near it would get destroyed. And so if they're coming down the mountain and this intense rain is coming, those horses are not going to be able to walk properly, and they'll run into big trouble. So they need to move, because Elijah, his expectations are high. Water is coming, and it's not going to be just a little bit. It's going to be enough. The area's going to get soaked, and very quickly at that. In a little while the sky grew black with clouds and wind, and there was a heavy shower, and Ahab rode and went to Israel. Then the hand of the Lord was on Elijah, and he girded up his loins and outran Ahab to Jezreel. So they're on chariots with horses going, and the hand of the Lord was on him. So that means God's doing something with Elijah there. So how fast was he running? We don't know, but he outdid everybody else. So for a man to run, I'm assuming, a chariot horse, if they're boogieing, for a man to run like this, he's running fast. So chapter 19, now Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done, how he'd killed all the prophets with the sword. Then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah, saying, "So may the gods do to me, and even more, if I do not make your life as the life of one of them by tomorrow about this time." And he was afraid, and arose and ran for his life, and came to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah, and left his servant there. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness, and came and sat down under a juniper tree. And he requested for himself that he might die, and said, "It is enough, O Lord, take my life, for I am not better than my fathers." So he had this high, right? There was this big event that happened. A lot of stuff went on. God really came out and revealed himself to the people. And now this lady has threatened to kill him. It's what happened? Why did he all of a sudden lose his confidence in this God? He just incinerated all this offering that was set up. And all of those false prophets got killed. And it's he's got God on his side. So why is he running scared? So you're on this spiritual high or emotional high, and you're sitting up here, and then all of a sudden you're down here. You don't know where to go. You don't know It's almost the opposite extreme. Like you're way up here, and then all of a sudden, instead of going back to your normal mood kind of thing, you become depressed, and everything's overwhelming. That seems to be what's happened here with this big event. He's mostly on his own, right? He claims that he is the only one still serving God. So he's depressed. He's scared. He feels like there's not much more point in him being there. So verse 5 says, he lay down and slept on a juniper tree, and behold, there was an angel touching him, and he said to him, arise, eat. Then he looked, and behold, there was at his head a bread cake baked on hot stones, and a jar of water. So he ate and drank and lay down. Then the angel of the Lord came again a second time, and touched him and said, arise, eat, because the journey is too great for you. So he arose, ate and drank, and went in the strength of that food 40 days and 40 nights to Horeb, the mountain of God. So that's approximately 200 miles that this guy just ran on foot. And the way it sounds like, it's nonstop, day and night. So whatever food he was eating, getting there, that sustained him to run. Like, that's an insane distance, and to go without energy. If you fast even for a full day and full night, your energy levels, they deplete like dramatically. And if you do a few days, let alone a week, and can you imagine 40 days, 40 nights, and then running 200 miles? Like, definitely that's something that the hand of God is doing. That's not something that man is capable of. So at Horeb, so then he came there to a cave and lodged there. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him, and he said to him, what are you doing here, Elijah? He said, I have been very zealous for the Lord, the God of hosts. For the sons of Israel have forsaken your covenant, torn down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword, and I alone am left, and they seek my life to take it away. This guy is used to being alone by himself, and he thinks he is alone. Obadiah, he said he hid the 100 prophets, right? And he's been keeping them alive during this time. Not everybody has bent the knee. Not everybody has forsaken God. And there was one spot I had skipped over where Obadiah, he had actually mentioned to Elijah, it's like, didn't you know what I did? How I hid the prophets and gave them food and drink and kept them preserved? But Elijah constantly, it's like he doesn't register that these people are still alive. They are still serving God. They're in hiding, but they haven't forsaken God. They are not serving the false gods. So verse 11, so he said, go forth and stand on the mountain before the Lord. And behold, the Lord was passing by, and a great and strong wind was rending the mountains and breaking in pieces the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a sound of a gentle blowing. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood in the entrance of the cave. And behold, a voice came to him and said, what are you doing here, Elijah? Then he said, I have been zealous for the Lord, the God of hosts, for the sons of Israel have forsaken your covenant, torn down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. And I alone am left. They seek my life to take it away. He's just thinking about me, right? Me. I am, it was all me doing this up to now, and now they're coming for me, and there's nobody else. And when you're used to being alone so much, right? You forget that you're not alone, and you get just that depressed feeling where it's, if you can't hold it all together and keep it all moving, nobody can. And so at this point, he's kind of given up, and he just wants to die and wants God to take his life. But that's not the case. So God does, in a sense, give him that wish that God will take him, but he has him at the next point. He's supposed to anoint Elisha as his successor. And so that happens a little bit later. But let's go over to 2 Kings. Skipped over a few things, but I would encourage you, there's more things going on with Elisha there in that. So there was the King Ahaziah, he fell, he got hurt, and I guess probably got hurt pretty bad, and so he was going to get his messengers to send for their false prophets or to see if he's going to recover, and Elijah finds him on the way, and it says, is there not a God in Israel that you need to go to these false prophets to go inquire of God to see if he will recover? And so they go back and they realize it's Elijah. And so the king sends a man with his 50, a captain with his 50 to go. So verse 9, chapter 1, verse 9. Then the king sent him a captain of 50 with his 50, and he went up to him. And behold, he was sitting on the top of the hill. And he said to him, O man of God, the king says, come down. Elijah replied to the captain of 50, I am a man of God. If I am a man of God, let fire come down from heaven and consume you and your 50. Then fire came down from heaven and consumed him and his 50. So he again sent him another captain of 50 with his 50. And he said to him, O man of God, thus says the king, come down quickly. Elijah replied to them, If I am a man of God, let fire come down from heaven and consume you and your 50. Then the fire of God came down from heaven and consumed him and his 50. So again he sent the captain of a third 50 with his 50. When the third captain of 50 went up, he came up and bowed down on his knees before Elijah, and begged him and said to him, O man of God, please let my life and the lives of these 50 servants of yours be precious in your sight. Behold, fire came down from heaven and consumed the first two captains of 50 with their 50s. But now let my life be precious in your sight. The angel of the Lord said to Elijah, Go down with him, do not be afraid of him. So he arose and went down with him to the king. I wonder if these guys showed up with an arrogant attitude, like, you're coming with us whether you like it or not. You know, you're calling me a man of God, but you're talking to me like this. So if I'm a man of God, let fire come down from heaven. So basically making a statement. So the last guy that shows up, he's being respectful, right? And Ernest realizing that, you know what, that he is a man of God, that God is alive and working, that I better treat him respectably or else I'm a dead man. And these 50 others with me are dead as well. And sometimes we need certain things to get us to realize that, you know what I mean, we're not to disrespect God, and we're not to disrespect his messengers. So anyway, once he's anointed Elisha, what they did was, he went to where Elisha was plowing the field. He went and put his mantle on as a sign that, you know, you're going to be my successor. You're going to take over the ministry when I'm gone. And so at that point, Elisha, what he does, he takes his ox and he has them cut up and boiled and all his equipment, and he gives it to the people, signifying that he's going all in. He's not going to be sitting on the fence, a little bit here, a little bit there, but he wants to do this wholeheartedly and just get right into this thing. And so as they travel around doing their thing, later when the time comes for Elijah to be taken up, Elijah starts traveling. He constantly tells Elisha, you stay here, I'm going to go on. And Elisha every time says, no, I'm coming with you. He's not going to be isolated and left alone. Like, Elijah is the kind of guy, he's used to being alone, doing his thing by himself. And Elisha wasn't going to be having it. He's like, oh no, I'm coming. I'm in this with you. I'm coming with you right to the end of this. So what happened when they were at the last spot before God took Elijah up, he struck the water, and the waters divided, right? And they both crossed. And then after God took Elijah up in the chariots of fire, you know, Elisha was a bit shocked, and you're crying out, like, you know, it's a big event there that happened again. So anyways, once he comes back, he grabs the mantle in that, and he comes over, and he strikes the water, and the prophets that are standing there observing all this, they see his first miracle that he does. He strikes the water, basically signifying that he is now continuing this ministry, this mission that God has given. And so they acknowledge that God has given Elisha the ability to perform all these miracles that Elijah was doing. And so they had wanted to send a bunch of people over to go the mountains to see. Maybe God just put him on a mountaintop somewhere, right? Or stuck him in a cave. And Elisha told him, no, don't do it. And then eventually they bugged him enough where he yielded. And so they went searching, they came back and said, we couldn't find him. It's like, I told you not to go. It's like when I'm saying something, believe me when I say something. I'm not saying things just for fun, right? So anyways, so as they're carrying on, he comes to the one city. So let's go verse 18. They returned to him while he was staying at Jericho and said to him, did I not say, do not go? Okay, then verse 9. Then the men of the city said to Elisha, behold, now the situation of this city is pleasant, as my Lord sees, but the water is bad and the land is unfruitful. He said, bring me a new jar and put salt in it. So they brought it to him. He went out to the spring of water and threw salt in it and said, thus says the Lord, I have purified these waters. There shall not be from their death or unfruitfulness any longer. So the waters have been purified to this day according to the word of Elisha which he spoke. Then he went up from there to Bethel. As he was going up by the way, young lads came out from the city and mocked him and said to him, go up, you bald head, go up, you bald head. So Bethel was kind of the religious center of idolatry. So this is a spot, an area where they're not worshiping God. And so they probably didn't believe what Elijah was doing. And the rumors they're hearing, they're probably not acknowledging it. So here they see Elisha now, and they're making fun of him. And so when he looked behind him and saw them, he cursed them in the name of the Lord. What he said, we don't really know. Maybe he just said, curse you in the name of the Lord, and that, I don't know, it doesn't say. But it says, then 2 female bears came out of the woods and tore up 42 lads of their number. 42 young people. Like, that's a grisly scene, right? But it's like, don't mess with it. Like, did he wish death on these young people? I probably don't think so. Elisha doesn't seem like the character, but where he's frustrated about their attitude and their disrespect, and then God sent these bears to make a statement, right? And they went to Mount Carmel, and from there he returned to Samaria. I'm going to fast forward a little bit. So chapter 4, now a certain woman of the wives of the sons of the prophets cried out to Elisha, your servant, my husband, is dead, and you know that your servant feared the Lord, and the creditor has come to take my 2 children to be his slaves. Elisha said to her, what shall I do for you? Tell me, what do you have in the house? And he said, your maidservant has nothing in the house except a jar of oil. And so from there, she collects as many jars as she can, and they fill up one jar and fill another jar, and eventually all the jars are full, and then she's able to take this, sell it, and give the money to the creditor, and then whatever's remaining to live off of. And so Elisha is now in a position. So Elijah was very much on his own, doing his thing. He was more making pronouncements of doom and gloom, right? Won't rain, it's going to be a rough time. He's making these harsh judgments. He's calling out fire from heaven to consume all these people. And Elisha is more a people person. He likes to be around people, and he cares for the people. And it's like Elijah was the judgment of God, in a sense, and Elisha is the grace of God. Where you got the 2 different characteristics of God, in a sense, coming out in these, where God is genuinely concerned. Because we read a number of times where Elisha is dealing with these people in their personal matters. So verse 8, chapter 4, says, now there came a day when Elisha passed over to Shunem, where there was a prominent woman, and she persuaded him to eat food. And so it was, as often as he passed by, he turned in there to eat food. She said to her husband, behold, now I perceive that this is a holy man of God, passing by us continually. Please let us make a little walled upper chamber. Let us set a bed for him there, and a table and a chair and a lampstand. And it shall be, when he comes to us, that he can turn in there. One day he came there and turned into the upper chamber and rested. Then he said to Gehazi, his servant, call this Shunammite. And when he had called her, she stood before him. He said to him, say now to her, behold, you have been careful for us with all this care. What can I do for you? Would you be spoken for to the king or to the captain of the army? And she said, I live among my own people. So he said, what then is to be done for her? And Gehazi answered, truly, she has no son, and her husband is old. He said, call her. When he had called her, she stood in the doorway. Then he said, at this season next year, you will embrace a son. And she said, no, my lord, O man of God, do not lie to your maidservant. The woman conceived and bore a son at that season the next year, as Elisha had said to her. It's almost like a Sarah story, right? Where it's like, don't make fun or don't tease me. But yeah, she had a son, but this son got sick or injured. Anyways, the son died. And then she was now upset. Have you given us this son just to, have him removed from us? And so Elisha, he comes over there, and he ends up laying on top, and he does his thing, and God revives the son, and he lives. But it's interesting that both the ladies' care, where Elijah and Elisha stayed, they both had a son that died, and that both of them ended up praying to God and they revived. You know, it's not sure why God decided to do it that way, that they would both go through that. But, you know what I mean? They cared for the people that were helping them, and they interceded, and God listened. And then, so the son was restored. And so then there was a different time where, so after all that, in verse 38, it says, when Elisha returned to Gilgal, there was a famine in the land, as the sons of the prophets were sitting before him. He said to his servant, put on the large pot and boil stew for the sons of the prophets. Then one went out into the fields to gather herbs and found a wild vine and gathered from it his lap full of wild gourds and came and sliced them into the pot of stew, for they did not know what they were. So they poured it out for the men to eat, and as they were eating of the stew, they cried out and said, O man of God, there is death in the pot. And they were unable to eat. But he said, now bring me meal. He threw it into the pot and said, pour it out for the people that they may eat. Then there was no harm in the pot. Now a man came from Elisha and brought the man of God bread of the first fruits, 20 loaves of barley and fresh ears of grain in his sack. And he said, give them to the people that they may eat. His attendant said, what? Will I set this before 100 men? But he said, give them to the people that they may eat. For thus says the Lord, they shall eat and have some left over. So he set it before them, and they ate and had some left over, according to the word of the Lord. So he's constantly dealing with the people around him, right? Looking after their needs, where God is doing divine intervention to show himself that he cares for the people, and that, with Elisha, showing a merciful side of his character. Yeah, there was the one king, all his plans were always getting spoiled because Elisha was telling him secrets to the Israelites. And so eventually he gets frustrated enough that he sends and wants to capture Elisha. So he sends his whole army they find out where he is. They send the whole army out. And it says in chapter 6, verse 14, so he sent horses and chariots and a great army there, and they came by night and surrounded the city. Now when the attendant of the man of God had risen early and gone out, behold, an army with horses and chariots was circling the city. And his servant said to him, alas, my master, what shall we do? Can you imagine, you're surrounded by the enemy army and they're there to capture you and possibly kill you? Can't blame the guy for being scared. So verse 16, so he answered, do not fear, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them. Then Elisha prayed and said, O Lord, I pray, open his eyes that he may see. And the Lord opened the servant's eyes, and he saw. And behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. When they came down to him, Elisha prayed to the Lord, strike this people with blindness, I pray. And then Elisha said to them, this is not the way, nor is this the city. Follow me, and I will bring you to the man whom you seek. And he brought them to Samaria. When they had come into Samaria, Elisha said, O Lord, open the eyes of these men, that they may see. So the Lord opened their eyes, and they saw, and behold, they were in the midst of Samaria. Then the king of Israel, when he saw them, said to Elisha, my father, shall I kill them? Shall I kill them? He answered, you shall not kill them. Would you kill those you have taken captive with your sword and with your bow? Set bread and water before them, that they may eat and drink and go to their master. So he prepared a great feast for them, and when they had eaten and drunk, he sent them away, and they went to their master, and the marauding bands of Arameans did not come again into the land of Israel. Jesus' motto, right? Do good unto those who persecute you. Love your enemy. This is, in a lot of ways, Elisha is like, a lot of people died when Elijah was around. A lot of the judgments of God and a lot of bold things were happening. But with Elisha around and with God working through Elisha, it's like that merciful, graceful side of God. People are being preserved. They're not being killed. And like by showing compassion like this, this group of people never came to bother them again. If they get coerced, you need to go. We want you to kill those and those people or take them captive. They're like, no, we went there. They did only but good to us. They could have killed us, but they did not. Why would we go after them, right? And so by showing compassion and kindness, to your enemy, and who knows where it would go, right? Sometimes they still come back, but oftentimes, right, it has the opposite effect. When they were working the one place, in chapter 6, verse 1, it says, "Now the sons of the prophets said to Elisha, Behold now," this is one of the stories, one of the first stories that stuck with me about Elisha. Years ago when I came across learning about Elisha, this was a story that I remembered. And it's always been, I think, when I think of him, this is the one story I think. "Behold now, the place before you where we are living is too limited for us. Please let us go to the Jordan, and each of us take from there a beam. Let us make a place there for ourselves where we may live." So he said, "Go." Then one said, "Please be willing to go." Then one said, "Please be willing to go with your servants." And he answered, "I shall go." So he's going with the people again. They want him to come. And so he's willing to go with them and not be in isolation. So he went with them, and when they came to the Jordan, they cut down trees. But as one was felling a beam, the axe head fell into the water, and he cried out and said, "Alas, my master, for it was borrowed." Then the man of God said, "Where did it fall?" When he showed him the place, he cut off a stick and threw it in there and made the iron float. And he said, "Take it up for yourself." So he put out his hand and took it. Those little details, something as insignificant, but this one man had a borrowed axe head that fell in the water, and he was grieved by it because, back in that day, you couldn't just go to Canadian Tire and buy an axe head, right, and replace it. And so just that God is concerned about the little details in life. And sometimes we're missing what he's doing. Like with Elijah, when he's constantly thinking, it's just me. I'm the only one left. But there was multiple times revealed to him that there was more. He wasn't the only one, but it wasn't registering in his head that there was more. And he constantly felt abandoned by his people. But it wasn't the case. And so he was in despair oftentimes. And Elisha, when you read the story about Elisha, you don't really find any fault in this guy. I can't recall a single fault that in his ministry, that at least from what's recorded, where he has emotional breakdowns, where he has, and he's working with the people, he's helping the people. He's not looking for his own. He's not looking to get rich. Like when Naaman came to get healed, Naaman wanted to give him all kinds of wealth, and he's like, "No, I don't want it. This is a work of God. I am not looking to get rewarded for a work of God." But, Gehazi, he was caught off guard by his own greed, right? And so he went after Naaman and said, "You know what? My master changed his mind. There's a couple guys that showed up, and we could actually use some extra clothes and things like that." And so we went back to Elisha, and Elisha confronts him. It's like, "Where have you been?" He said, "Nowhere." It's like, but he knew where he had gone. And now the leprosy that Naaman had now went on to Gehazi, and Gehazi went out a leper, because of his greed. See, Elisha wasn't just concerned about his own wealth and well-being. Like when he started out in his ministry, it's not that we're all called to do that, but he went all in, right? When he cleaned up what he was doing, he was all in. This was a particular ministry that he was going to be called to. We're not all called to these extreme missions, right? But we have little things that we can contribute and little details where God's working things out. It's interesting how, God had worked in the heart of this one lady for Elijah, but already beforehand. So when Elijah gets there, she's prepared to receive him, even though she doesn't really have any idea what's going on. But God has already worked in the hearts. So oftentimes, if we go somewhere, to be aware that, if God's working in our lives and if he's going before us, who knows what he's setting up, just to flow along. So often we miss the little details on how things are falling into place. Elijah, he has other parts of his ministry. He's not done. On the Mount of Transfiguration, Moses, Elijah, and Jesus, they're having their group huddle there. Moses representing the law, Elijah representing the prophets, and Jesus representing salvation, all that to come, how it all culminates. But how they're representing these things. And so they have extreme missions, and it's not the case that we'll be going through dramatic events like that. I think most of us, I don't know if we could handle events like that. But God does do certain things just to show that he is God, but that we often we forget. And so he's given us the scripture so we can learn about the things that God has done so that we don't forget. Because we are a forgetful people. Over and over with the Israelites, you read through the Old Testament, it's just a cycle. They turn to God, things go well for them, Then they get distracted, they fall for false gods, and then God allows the enemy to come in, and then they repent, they turn to God, and it just goes over and over. And how often do we not get distracted in the same way? And to stay focused, we have this for our learning, so we can improve on it, learn from their mistakes, learn from the things that they've done, and that we don't need to make a lot of these mistakes. And God always works differently in different ways, right? And we might not have, a chariot of fire, around us that we can all of a sudden see, and but so for some reason, God has decided to keep certain things a mystery to the world, but to His elect, He reveals Himself and who He is. I don't know. But read into Elijah and Elisha for yourselves. There's a lot to be read, and if you slow it down and just analyze and just see how God is working in those little details, the details that you don't often notice, and then see, what's God been doing in my life that those little details I'm overlooking, to acknowledge that God's been working there. If you get into a dispute, let's say with your spouse, right? And people are praying, and it's like, all of a sudden you get softened, and then you come around, and it's like, all of a sudden you hear people are praying for you, right? It's like God is working, stirring the hearts there to pray for you so that you could overcome whatever obstacle or whatever it might be. God could do all things, but He's called us to be a co-worker in the work, be it physical work, be it spiritual work, via prayer and interceding. We're not so much called to kill everybody, and we're not at all called to kill everybody. The Old Testament, there's a lot of killing, a lot of violence. It was a different time in a different season with certain things going on. We are not in that age. God has a different mission for His church. To love one another and to love not the things of the world, but to share the love of God to the world so that the world will be drawn. Because for all men will know you're my disciples for the love you have one for another, right? And sometimes we don't have that love for one another. Somebody rubs you the wrong way and you're not willing to forgive or things like that. And then we get caught off guard, right? And then all of a sudden we're in a rut. And that's where, like Elijah was on his own. And so he without God's intervention, it felt like he was just going to stay in a depressed state. But if we stay around other believers, we have other believers to wrap their arm around and say, you know what? We're here with you. We'll help you carry this. God hasn't forgotten you. Those reminders, right? We need reminders. We need reminders. We're people that forget. And by assembling and by not being like Elijah and so alone, you'll actually enjoy life a bit more, I would dare say. We're not all people. I recognize that. But, to isolate, that just because that depression state where you get down and out, it's very real that a lot of people struggle with and don't know how to get out. But there is a hope. And you know what? When you get busy in the work of God and, when you share the gospel with somebody and all of a sudden they're coming around, you can talk to most people that if they've had that experience, the excitement they get out of that, how just being able to share the gospel and their eyes being open, just being a part of God's work, it's an uplifting event, right? It gets you on a spiritual high. But not to get caught off guard on that spiritual high, right? Because we're not always going to be up there, but they're a nice bonus to live on. Where, if we're always, up here and then down there, we're all over the place in our faith. Like, keep your faith on what God has done for you on the cross. But when you get emotional bonuses, you might enjoy them. There's nothing wrong with a spiritual high to have this when you're flying up in the clouds, but don't base your salvation on that when you don't have that experience. And then get in a state where Elijah was. But anyways, I'll leave it there. God bless you, and I'll pray here in closing. Father, we thank you for the privilege of having your word readily available for us. Thank you that we have it available in a language we can understand. And thank you for your Spirit that opens our eyes, that enlightens our eyes to understand your word more and more. Thank you for this church fellowship you've given us that we can work together and encourage one another with. And may you just continue to bless everyone here, help them in their challenges, give them wisdom in their things that they have going on, and just reveal yourself to them that they just sense your nearness to them. In Jesus' name, amen.